The proposition Jasper Montgomery's Italian leather shoes clicked rhythmically against the marble floor of Montgomery Innovations headquarters. His face, usually composed with practiced indifference, now carried the shadow of genuine concern. The attorney's words still echoed in his mind: marry within 60 days, or Montgomery Innovations goes to Harrison. 15 years of ruthless dedication had transformed his grandmother's modest software company into a tech empire worth billions. Now it could all slip away because of a clause in Eleanor Montgomery's will that he'd never seen coming. Mr. Montgomery, his assistant Julian hurried alongside him. Mr. Dawkins from legal says we can contest the will, but it would take months, possibly years. Jasper stopped abruptly, by which time Harrison would have driven my company into the ground. His cousin Harrison Wells had been trying to get his hands on Montgomery Innovations since Eleanor passed away 3 months ago. The man was as charismatic as he was unscrupulous. We need options. Julian, real ones. Well, there's always— Julian hesitated. An arranged marriage. Temporary, of course. Jasper scoffed. With whom? Every suitable woman in my circle would demand half my assets or more for such an arrangement. He continued walking, lost in thought. It was nearly midnight, and the building was mostly empty except for the night cleaning crew. As he approached his office, he noticed a woman with chestnut hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, humming softly as she emptied trash bins. "You're here late," he remarked, surprising himself with the observation. The woman startled, nearly dropping her bag. "Mr. Montgomery, I didn't time, sorry, no need to apologize." He studied her name tag. "Violet, is it?" She nodded, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Violet Peters. I work extra shifts whenever I can." Something about her calm demeanor intrigued him. "Why the extra hours?" Violet hesitated, then answered with unexpected frankness. "I'm saving to open a community center in Westbrook. The neighborhood needs a safe place for kids after school." Jasper raised an eyebrow. Westbrook was one of the city's most troubled areas. Noble goal. "Just trying to make a difference where I can." She shrugged. Returning to her work, he watched her for a moment longer, an impossible idea forming in his mind. "Miss Peters, what would you say if I offered you a proposition?" She looked up, wariness crossing her features. "What kind of proposition?" "A business arrangement. A mutually beneficial one." The words came out smoothly, despite the absurdity of what he was about to propose. "I need a wife." Violet's eyes widened. "Excuse me, not a real one," he added quickly. "A temporary arrangement. On paper only." Julian, who had been standing nearby reviewing documents, nearly dropped his tablet. "My grandmother's will stipulates that I must marry within 60 days, or I lose control of Montgomery Innovations to my cousin, who would dismantle everything I've built." Violet's expression shifted from shock to skepticism. "And you're asking me, a janitor, precisely why it's perfect. No one would suspect a business arrangement. What would I get out of this?" Her directness surprised him again. $5 million, half upon signing the marriage certificate, half when we divorce after a suitable period. And he paused, an unexpected inspiration striking him. "Full funding for your community center." Violet's breath caught. He could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. "This is insane," she finally said. "It's business," Jasper corrected. 1 year of your life in exchange for your dream and financial security. You don't even know me. I know enough. You work hard, you're honest about your ambitions, and you aren't part of the social circles that would exploit this situation." Violet looked down at her cleaning cart, then back at him. "I need time to think." "You have 48 hours, Jasper replied, handing her his business card. "My private number is on the back." As she walked away, Julian approached him. "Sir, are you certain about this?" Jasper watched Violet disappear down the corridor. "No, but I'm out of options." 3 days later, Violet sat across from him in his penthouse. Her simple blue dress contrasted sharply with the sleek, minimalist decor. She placed a folder on his glass coffee table. "I have conditions," she said firmly. "Written down?" Jasper smiled slightly, impressed by her preparation. "I expected nothing less." She slid the folder toward him. "If we do this, it's a partnership, not employer-employee. I won't be treated like staff." As he reviewed her surprisingly reasonable terms, Violet added softly, "I never thought I'd get married like this." Jasper looked up, momentarily seeing past his own agenda to the woman who was about to change her entire life for his benefit. "Neither did I, Miss Peters." He extended his hand. "Do we have a deal?" After a moment's hesitation, Violet placed her hand in his. "We have a deal, Mr. Montgomery." Neither of them realized that the simple handshake would be the first step toward something neither had bargained for. Paper hearts. The Montgomery penthouse remained as pristine as a museum, despite having gained a new resident 2 weeks prior. Violet moved through the spaces carefully, like a visitor afraid to disturb an exhibit. Her few possessions, books, plants, and framed photographs, were confined to a bedroom suite on the east wing, as far from Jasper's quarters as the floor plan allowed. Their wedding had been a clinical affair at City Hall, with only Julian and Violet's childhood friend Tessa as witnesses. The ring on her finger, an elegant but not ostentatious diamond band, felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's life. In many ways, it did. Mrs. Montgomery. The housekeeper's voice startled Violet from her thoughts as she stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Please, just Violet, she corrected gently. Mrs. Donovan, a silver-haired woman who had managed Jasper's household for years, smiled tightly. Mr. Montgomery asked me to inform you that he won't be home for dinner. Again, of course. Violet nodded. In their 14 days of marriage they had shared exactly 2 meals, both silent, awkward affairs punctuated only by the clink of silverware against fine china. After Mrs. Donovan left, Violet wandered into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. Despite the fully stocked shelves, she felt out of place preparing anything in this spotless industrial-grade kitchen. Instead, she grabbed an apple and retreated to her room. Her laptop screen glowed with architectural designs for the community center. True to his word, Jasper had transferred the first installment of her payment and set up meetings with developers. The community center was no longer a distant dream but an imminent reality. She should have felt elated, but instead, a hollow sensation had taken residence in her chest. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tessa. How's married life with Ice King? Violet sighed and typed back, non-existent. We're like ships passing in the night. The arrangement was working exactly as planned. So why did it feel so empty? Jasper stared at the quarterly reports, the figures blurring before his eyes. Across the boardroom table, Harrison Wells leaned back in his chair, a smug smile playing at his lips. Congratulations on your recent nuptials, cousin, Harrison said, his voice dripping with insincerity. Such a whirlwind romance. Who would have thought you'd fall for the cleaning staff? Several board members shifted uncomfortably. My wife, Jasper emphasized the word, that has remarkable qualities that clearly escaped your notice. Harrison, the protective edge in his voice surprised even himself. I'm sure, Harrison smirked. I look forward to getting better acquainted at the Foundation Gala next week. Jasper froze. The annual Montgomery Foundation Gala was the social event of the season. He had completely forgotten about it and about the scrutiny his unexpected marriage would face there later that evening. Jasper returned home earlier than usual, finding Violet curled up on the living room sofa with a book. She wore simple cotton pajamas, her hair loose around her shoulders, a stark contrast to the models and socialites he typically associated with. We need to talk, he announced, loosening his tie. Violet marked her page and sat up. Is something wrong with the community center plans? No, Jasper paced, uncharacteristically agitated. The Montgomery Foundation Gala is next week. We'll be expected to attend together. Oh, understanding dawned on her face. And I don't fit the profile of Jasper Montgomery's wife. That's not, he started, then stopped. We need to prepare. The board is already suspicious. Harrison is looking for any evidence that our marriage is a sham. Violet stood, squaring her shoulders. So train me. I'm a quick learner for the next week. Their quiet, separate existence transformed into an intensive crash course in high society. Jasper brought in etiquette coaches, stylists, and briefed Violet on every important guest who would attend. To his surprise, she absorbed information rapidly, asking insightful questions about the business relationships and power dynamics at play. Why does the Montgomery Foundation focus on technology grants rather than basic needs? She asked one evening as they reviewed the foundation's history. Josh Barr looked up from his tablet. It's what we know best. Technology drives innovation. But innovation doesn't help if people can't afford to eat, Violet countered. In Westbrook we need computers, yes, but we also need food security and healthcare access. The night of the gala arrived with an unexpected tension. Jasper waited in the living room, checking his watch repeatedly. When Violet finally emerged, he found himself momentarily speechless. The emerald gown complemented her olive skin perfectly. Her usually practical hairstyle transformed into an elegant updo. But what struck him most was how she carried herself, confident but unpretentious, beautiful but unaware of it. Will I pass inspection? She asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. You'll do more than pass, he replied, offering his arm. You might actually outshine everyone there. In the limousine, Violet fidgeted with her clutch. What's our story? How did we meet? We stick as close to the truth as possible. You worked in my building. I noticed you. We connected, and fell madly in love in record time. Her tone was teasing. A smile tugged at his lips, another surprising reaction. Something like that. The gala was a swirl of designer gowns, champagne flutes, and calculated conversations. Jasper kept Violet close, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they navigated the crowd. To his amazement, she charmed person after person, her genuine interest in their charitable work disarming even the most cynical socialites. Your wife is refreshing, remarked Patricia Worthington, a major donor who was notoriously difficult to impress. No wonder you were so secretive about her. Across the room, Jasper caught Harrison watching them, his expression calculating. When his cousin approached them during dinner, Jasper instinctively tightened his grip on Violet's hand. Tell me, Mrs. Montgomery, Harrison said silkily, what first attracted you to my cousin? His winning personality, or perhaps his considerable assets? Before Jasper could intervene, Violet smiled warmly. Actually, it was how he talked about his grandmother. Anyone who could speak with such respect about the woman who raised him. Despite his reputation for being, she glanced at Jasper with a mischievous glint, somewhat challenging to work with, clearly had depth others missed. Jasper stared at her, momentarily stunned. He had indeed mentioned his grandmother during one of their preparation sessions. But the sentiment Violet expressed felt genuine, not rehearsed. Harrison's smile faltered. How, touching. As the evening wound down, they found themselves on a quiet balcony overlooking the city lights. Violet's cheeks were flushed from champagne and dancing. "We did it," she said softly. "I think they believed us." Jasper studied her profile in the moonlight. "You were remarkable in there. Just playing my part." But something in her expression shifted, a brief vulnerability crossing her features before she looked away. For the first time since their arrangement began, Jasper felt a strange discomfort not with Violet, but with the terms they had agreed to. The realization that in less than a year, she would walk out of his life with her settlement, leaving his penthouse as empty and sterile as before, unsettled him in ways he couldn't articulate. As they rode home in silence, the space between them and the limousine seemed both too small and impossibly vast, just like the paper-thin marriage that was beginning to feel more substantial than either of them had anticipated. Cracks in the armor spring rain pelted against the penthouse windows as Violet arranged fresh flowers in the once sterile living room. Over the past 3 months, small changes had transformed the space. Colorful throw pillows, stacks of well-loved books, and photographs that captured moments rather than achievements. The community center in Westbrook was taking shape. With construction ahead of schedule, Violet visited the site weekly, often returning with mud on her shoes and excitement in her eyes. Today, however, her expression was troubled as she stared at her phone. "Bad news?" Jasper asked, entering with 2 coffee mugs, a morning ritual that had developed without discussion. "The center needs additional permits. The inspector found issues with the electrical plans." She accepted the coffee gratefully. "It'll delay everything by at least a month." Without hesitation, Jasper replied, "I'll call Lorenzo. He owes me a favor from the terrace project." "You don't have to, I want to," he said simply. Their gazes held for a moment too long before Violet looked away, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. These moments had been occurring more frequently, small kindnesses, lingering looks, conversations that stretched into the night, about everything from childhood memories to philosophical debates. The ringing doorbell interrupted the tension. Julian stood in the hallway, his normally composed face drawn with concern. "Mr. Montgomery, we have a situation. Harrison has filed a formal complaint with the board, claiming your marriage is fraudulent." Violet's sharp intake of breath seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "What evidence does he have?" Jasper's voice was dangerously calm. "A private investigator. He's been watching you both." Julian handed over a manila envelope. "He has photographs of separate bedrooms, minimal public appearances together outside of required events. That's invasive and proves nothing," Jasper snapped. "He's also obtained Violet's bank records showing the transfer. He's calling it a bride payment." The color drained from Violet's face. "This could ruin the community center." "No," Jasper said firmly. "I won't let that happen." After Julian left with instructions to prepare legal countermeasures, an uncomfortable silence settled between them. "I'm sorry," Violet finally said, her voice small. "I never meant to endanger your company." Jasper turned to her, his expression intense. "You have nothing to apologize for. But if people find out, let me worry about Harrison." He reached for her hand, an unprecedented gesture. "The center will open, Violet. I promise you that." Something, it shifted between them in that moment, cracking the carefully constructed walls of their arrangement. The emergency board meeting the following day was tense with Harrison's smug confidence radiated across the conference table as he presented his evidence. "It's clear that my cousin has orchestrated a sham marriage to circumvent the terms of my grandmother's will," he concluded, leaning back in his chair. "I move that control of Montgomery Innovations be transferred as originally intended." Before the board could respond, the conference room door opened. Violet entered, looking poised in a simple but elegant navy dress. "Mrs. Montgomery," the board chairman acknowledged, surprised. "We weren't expecting you." "I apologize for the interruption," she said, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter of her hands. "But I believe I should address these accusations directly." Harrison's smile faltered slightly. "This is a board matter concerning my marriage," Violet interrupted. "I believe that makes it my matter as well." She moved to stand beside Jasper, who looked at her with equal parts confusion and admiration. "Mr. Wells suggests our marriage is fraudulent based on separate bedrooms and financial transactions." Violet's gaze swept the room. "The separate bedrooms reflect my respect for Jasper's privacy while I adjusted to a new life. As for the money, yes, Jasper transferred funds to me for a community center in Westbrook, which you can verify is under construction." She took a breath. "What Mr. Wells' investigation failed to uncover is why I agreed to marry Jasper Montgomery, a man known for his ruthless business tactics and emotional detachment." The room grew still. "I saw something in him that others missed," Beneath the calculating exterior is a man who visits his grandmother's grave every month with fresh lilacs. A man who remembers every employee's name at the headquarters. A man who quietly donated to my friend Tessa's cancer treatment last month without telling me. Jasper's head snapped toward her, genuine surprise on his face. He hadn't known she'd discovered that private gesture. Our marriage may not be conventional, but it is ours, Violet concluded, and it deserves the same respect as any other. As she finished speaking, Jasper reached for her hand. Entwining his fingers with hers in full view of the board, the chairman cleared his throat. Well, Mr. Wells, unless you have more substantial evidence, I believe we're done here. Harrison's face darkened with barely contained rage as he gathered his documents and stormed out. Later that evening, in the quiet of the penthouse, Jasper finally asked the question that had been haunting him since the meeting. How did you know about Tessa's treatment? Violet looked up from her tea. She told me. She thought I knew already. Said you called it an anonymous donation, but she recognized your company's financial officer's name on the paperwork. Jasper ran a hand through his hair. I didn't want you to think that you have a heart. She smiled softly. Too late. I've suspected that for a while now. Something vulnerable crossed his features. What you said today, ... Was any of it real? The question hung between them, weighted with possibilities neither had dared acknowledge. Every word, she whispered. Revelations touched summer descended on the city with relentless heat, matching the intensity that had been building between Violet and Jasper since the board meeting. Their marriage, once a sterile business arrangement, had transformed into something undefined yet undeniably powerful. They still maintained separate bedrooms, but their lives had intertwined in countless other ways: shared meals, weekend outings to the community center site, and long conversations that often ended with them falling asleep on opposite ends of the sofa, only to awaken with their hands somehow having found each other during the night. On a sweltering Wednesday afternoon, Jasper left a crucial investor meeting early, drawn inexplicably to the Westbrook neighborhood. The community center was nearing completion, and he found himself wanting to see it through Violet's eyes. As he approached the building, he heard children's laughter. Around the corner, in what would eventually be the playground area, Violet sat surrounded by a group of children on a colorful blanket, reading aloud from a well-worn book. Miss Violet, will we still be able to come when the fancy building is done? Asked a small boy with glasses too large for his face. This is your center, Miguel, she assured him, no matter how fancy it looks. But what about those business people? A girl with braided hair asked skeptically. They look at us funny when they visit. Violet's expression grew serious. Those business people are learning something important, that everyone deserves beautiful spaces and opportunities, not just those who can afford them. Even Mr. Jasper, Miguel persisted. You said he used to think money was the most important thing. Jasper froze, concealed by the construction barriers but able to hear every word. Violet smiled softly. Mr. Jasper is learning faster than anyone. He just needed someone to remind him what truly matters. You mean like how you're always saying we should share and be kind even when it's hard? The girl asked. Exactly like that, Lucia. Jasper slipped away before they could notice him, her words echoing in his mind. Back at his office, he pulled up the community center's financial reports and discovered something he'd overlooked. Violet had been volunteering with Westbrook children for years, running an informal reading program long before she'd ever met him. The realization hit him with unexpected force while he'd been building his empire. She had been quietly changing lives with nothing but books and kindness. That evening when Violet returned home, she found Jasper waiting with dinner, prepared his first attempt at cooking in the penthouse kitchen. What's the occasion? She asked, taking in the slightly burned pasta and mismatched table setting with evident delight. I wanted to talk to you about the community center, he said, pulling out her chair. I think we should expand the program. Her eyebrows rose. We're already over budget. Money isn't the issue. He sat across from her, unusually earnest. I went to Westbrook today. I saw you with the children. Understanding dawned on her face. You were spying on me. Not intentionally, he admitted. But I'm glad I did. Those kids adore you, Violet. She looked down at her plate. I've known most of them since they were toddlers. Their parents work multiple jobs and there's nowhere safe for them after school. Why didn't you tell me about your reading program? She shrugged. It wasn't relevant to our arrangement. The word arrangement landed between them like a physical object, a reminder of the temporary nature of what they had built. What if ... Jasper began, then hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. What if our arrangement became something else? Violet's eyes met his, a mixture of hope and fear in her gaze. What do you mean? Before he could respond, his phone rang with Julian's emergency tone. The moment shattered as Jasper answered to devastating news: a massive security breach in their systems, potentially exposing sensitive client data. I have to go, he said, already reaching for his jacket. Violet nodded, disappointment evident in her expression. I understand. As he hurried out, Jasper felt the weight of what remained unsaid pressing on him more heavily than any business crisis ever had. The fortune found datum leaves danced outside the penthouse windows as Violet packed her belongings. each item a reminder of the life she had built there over the past 10 months. The community center had opened to great success, with programs already at capacity and plans for expansion in the works. Their arrangement had served its purpose. Montgomery Innovations was securely in Jasper's control. Harrison's attempts at takeover thwarted. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter, waiting for final signatures. Violet ran her fingers over the spines of books she had scattered throughout the once Durrell penthouse, remembering nights spent discussing their contents with Jasper. The man she had married for a business deal had become, what, not just her friend, not quite her husband in the true sense, something undefined that made leaving far more painful than it should have been. Their almost conversation from 3 months ago had never been revisited. After the security breach was contained, Jasper had thrown himself into work with renewed intensity, often returning home only to shower and change before disappearing again. The distance between them had grown precisely as their contract dictated it, preparing them both for the inevitable separation. Yet every time their hands accidentally touched or their eyes met across a room, Violet felt the same undeniable connection that had been building since that day in the boardroom. The elevator chimed, announcing Jasper's return from his final board meeting before their scheduled signing tomorrow. He entered looking uncharacteristically disheveled, his tie loosened and hair mussed as though he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "You're packing," he observed, his voice hollow. "Just getting organized," Violet replied, not meeting his eyes. "The movers come tomorrow after the papers." Jasper moved to the windows, staring out at the city skyline that had once represented everything he valued. "The board meeting went well. Q4 projections are strong." "That's good," she said softly. "I made an announcement today." Something in his tone made Violet look up. "About the company. About me." He turned to face her, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. "I'm stepping down as CEO." The book Violet had been holding tumbled from her grasp. "What? Why would you do that?" "Because I've built an empire that means nothing if I have no one to share it with." He took a step toward her. "Because I've spent my life chasing wealth while ignoring what truly matters." "Jasper, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I'm establishing a foundation separate from the company, separate from my family name. It will fund community centers like yours across the country, focusing on neighborhoods that have been overlooked." Violet's heart thundered in her chest. "That's incredible. I want you to run it." "Another step closer, if you're willing." She studied his face, searching for signs of the calculating businessman she had first met. "Why me?" "Because you see value in people, not profit margins. Because you've taught me more about true wealth in 10 months than I learned in 38 years of chasing it." His voice dropped to nearly a whisper. "Because the thought of you walking out that door tomorrow makes everything else I've built seem worthless." The air between them seemed to vibrate with unspoken emotion. "What about our arrangement?" Violet asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The divorce papers are right there." Jasper glanced at the documents on the counter. In 3 strides, he crossed to them, picked them up, and tore them in half. "I don't want an arrangement anymore." Violet, he moved to stand before her, close enough that she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. "I want a marriage, a real one." Her breath caught. "Are you sure? Your whole life has been about control, about independence, and I've never been more certain of anything than I am about wanting a life with you." He reached for her hands, holding them between his own. "You came into my world as part of a business deal, but you've become the heart of it." "My heart." Tears welled in Violet's eyes. "I never expected to fall in love with a man who married me for his fortune. And I never expected that in saving my company, I would find something far more valuable." He brushed a tear from her cheek. "So what do you say? Will you stay not as part of a deal, but because you want to?" Violet looked around at the penthouse that had become home, at the man before her who had transformed from a cold businessman into someone capable of such profound change, and knew there was only one answer. "Yes," she whispered, rising on tiptoes to press her lips to his for the first real kiss of their marriage. "It turns out the fortune I was looking for wasn't in your bank account after all." As autumn light streamed through the windows, illuminating them in its golden glow, Jasper Montgomery, once driven solely by wealth and power, held the true fortune he had found, a love that had taught him the richness of a life, measured not in dollars, but in the depth of connection to another soul.